Hi, my name's Lou Pacheco, and we're here at the cable studio starting a new show called the Baystate Exchange. And this show is going to be allow people with different topics, different candidates for different offices all throughout the state to come on and explain their views and to tell people just where they stand on certain issues. And today we're starting out with the first show with candidate for Attorney General Maura Healey. How are you?
I'm great, Chief. Great to see you. Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a show that we've been doing cable here for years, and now we because of the interest in public has in the different races around the state, that we thought that we could have some of the candidates come in here and talk to us about some of the issues. So I'm gonna start right in. And what role does the Massachusetts Attorney General play in the daily lives of ordinary people? And why does who hold that office make a difference to people?
Well, I'm so delighted to be able to have a chance to spend time with you today to talk about the role of the Attorney General's office. You know, as I go around the state, it's not clear to everyone that they understand the impact and the role that the Attorney General plays in their lives on a regular basis. You know, the Attorney General is the state's lawyer, running the state's law firm, and basically the Attorney General and the work of the Attorney General's office touches just about every aspect of a person's life here in this state, every aspect of our economy and industry. And the job of the Attorney General is to represent the people, represent the public interest, protect consumers, protect taxpayers, to fight against corporate fraud or abuse, to level the playing field, and to work together with others in law enforcement on important issues of public safety.
Well, that's quite a job, because I know it's a big state, and currently I'm working for a district attorney's office, and they deal mostly with the street crime and the crime that happens in the county. And the Attorney General's office, and believe me when I tell you, people don't really know many times what the district attorney's office does, never mind the Attorney General's office. So what does the leader of the Attorney General, what does that leadership position mean? And is it interchangeable? Is it fungible, as they say in our business? Can you put anybody in there? What difference does it make who the Attorney General is?
I think it makes a lot of difference. The Attorney General is, first of all, a lawyer and a leader of a 500-person law firm that operates in 4 locations around the state. The headquarters is in Boston, but we have offices in Worcester and Springfield and New Bedford. And the job of the Attorney General, as I said, is to represent the people, to set legal policy for the state, and to represent the state in court. And we do that in a number of ways, but it's really important that in an Attorney General you have somebody who has experience as a lawyer, experience as a leader, experience managing large groups and divisions and bureaus, and experience setting priorities and executing on those priorities.
Wow, there's 500 people that work at the Attorney General's office?
There are lawyers, investigators, state troopers, secretaries, and paralegals.
So when we go out to vote on the Attorney General, we're actually hiring a lawyer. We're hiring a lawyer for ourselves as citizens of Massachusetts.
You are. You are electing a person who is a lawyer and a leader, somebody who's going to be prepared to step in and lead and represent the public interest on day one. And I've had the benefit of being in that office the last 7 years. I started there 7 years ago as head of the Civil Rights Division. I left a career in private practice and took a big pay cut to do that job, and have loved it ever since. Later in time, I became head of the Public Protection Bureau and the Business and Labor Bureau. So at the time I resigned to run for Attorney General myself, I was in charge of about 250 of the 500 lawyers and staff in that office.
Oh, so you had a quarter of the office in your division at one time?
Yeah, more than that, close to half of the office. And you know, I think that for me, it's really important that we have somebody who has been on the front lines, has been doing the job, and is ready to step in and lead on day one. And in my last 7 years in that office, you know, I was able to do just that. I led and argued the country's first successful challenge to the Defense of Marriage Act. I worked on and led efforts to combat predatory lending, to fight foreclosures, setting up a a program called Home Corps that's been about keeping families in their homes. I led cases on behalf of people with disabilities and efforts to protect kids in schools from bullying and the like. And I've had terrific opportunities in that office. I understand, Chief, how that office works on a day-to-day basis and how we can stand up for consumers and stand up for those who are vulnerable and try to make a difference in people's lives.
Yes, it's pretty intimidating to try to go into an agency that is a statewide agency with 500 members if you haven't been vetted through the agency. I can understand that. I mean, it must be a daunting task to take over.
Well, it is a large and significant responsibility. And, I come with the benefit of having been a criminal prosecutor, having been a civil rights attorney, having been a courtroom litigator, arguing and winning cases on behalf of the people, and having had direct experience on the front lines in the Attorney General's office. And I think that is important and will enable me to be an effective, experience-driven Attorney General.
I can vouch for that. At the DA's level, the best, what I consider the better and the more effective ADAs, assistant district attorneys, have always done a little business law, done a little defense law, and done some prosecution.
Yeah. And you know how that is in what we do because, it's not just understanding the office, but having the experience of having worked with district attorneys, having worked with local police, having worked with selectmen and city officials on issues. These are all things that I've done, and I think it's important if you're going to do the job of Attorney General well.
I've always been proud of the Massachusetts Attorney General's office because we were first in a lot of things. Like with the smoking, I think we were the first half a dozen or so states to get on that. And that made a difference in a lot of lives, saved a lot of lives.
Sure did.
Yeah. Let's switch hats for just a second and let's go to the Supreme Court. Recently there was a Hobby Lobby case came out of the Supreme Court, and some people have described that as just a narrow case that only deals with that one particular company. Basically, as a layperson, it looked to me like they were saying that the corporation was a person, but that's just a lay person. But in your opinion, do you see that as a wide, far-reaching decision, or do you see it narrowed just for the hobby lobbyist?
I think it's a decision that could have pretty far-reaching implications. We're going to have to see how that plays out in subsequent cases. But, this is what this case was about. This was about a company, Hobby Lobby, they're an arts and crafts store, that wanted to not comply with the federal law, which says you have to make insurance coverage available for contraception. And because of the religious preference of the company's owners, the company did not want to comply with the federal law. So they took it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled just a couple weeks ago that it's okay for that company to do that. And that just as a few years ago we had the Citizens United decision, which said for the first time corporations are people, now we have a Supreme Court decision saying corporations are people, they can exercise religious freedom, religious expression, and that means they can deny access to women's health care. That is a problem. It's also a problem in that we have companies now able to use the excuse or the guise of exercise of religious freedom to act in ways that maybe we don't think comply with the law, to discriminate, for example. We're going to have to see how this plays out, but I find it really disturbing because, access to health care, access to contraception, these are issues of personal autonomy. They're pocketbook issues, too. We know how important contraception, ability to access contraception has been for family planning and for women's ability to compete and stay in the workforce, to even get higher education. So, anything that limits that access or cuts into that access is a problem. But, I know that as Attorney General here in Massachusetts, I'm going to make sure that we find a way to provide that coverage to women whose employers may seek to deny them access.
Oh, that's great. But it's still sad to me, like I said, I'm pretty proud of Massachusetts, and I know that the federal Constitution was in part modeled after the Mass state.
That's right, with John Adams,
John Adams
writing it here.
And there was nobody more religious than the Adams family, but they were very careful to separate church and state so that didn't happen.
Right. And, you know, whether you're more liberal or more conservative, I think we all sort of grew up with this understanding of separation of church and state and how important that is as a principle. And so it's decisions like this that can be really problematic.
I would think so, especially if the people whose religious beliefs, I mean, most everybody's aware of Christian religious beliefs, but there's many other religions, and if you started on other religions and giving them autonomy too, it would get to be a grab bag pretty quick.
Right, right.
All right, we'll switch hats again because the Attorney General has a lot of hats. Most people believe that police routinely trace all guns. Now, this is kind of in my bailiwick. In crimes, that as soon as the crime's committed, we get the gun. Sometimes if we just get a bullet or a casing, that we're off and running, and we can trace that all the way back to the maker, and then that's done in a routine case. I know that you've made the fact that that's not routine a centerpiece of what you've been talking about around the state. Do you see any parallels between the federal handling of the tobacco issue back a few years ago with not allowing the data to be spread to the local agencies and not allowing the assistance of the federal agencies to help the locals in this nationwide problem? Do you see any parallels between that and what's happening now with the gun legislations?
Yeah, I actually sadly see a lot of parallels. You know, people may think that law enforcement has the ability to trace every gun, to trace evidence in these crimes, and it's just not so. Law enforcement doesn't have the tools, doesn't have the resources to do it, and as Attorney General, I want to work and advocate on behalf of law enforcement to make sure that they have the resources and the tools to trace all guns that are involved in criminal activity. You know from what you do, as well as anybody, how important this is to reducing gun violence and to ending gun trafficking, which is a huge problem here. And, you know, the point about tobacco, years ago, the tobacco lobby and the tobacco industry fought hard to make sure that we couldn't get the data and we couldn't study what was happening to people's health and to people, leading them to addiction, right? And they fought hard to make sure that people were kept in the dark. And, you know, what we've seen happen with some of the NRA and their allies in Congress is that the American people have been kept in the dark and that they've cut off federal funding to study gun crimes and to look at what's happening there in ways that, you know, unfortunately would have enabled us to do more. And so, you know, I see a lot of parallels in what the tobacco industry is did and what the gun lobby is trying to do. You see it happening today. In this country, I think there have been really strong efforts, and here in Massachusetts, to get needed gun reform legislation through. I'm happy to see that our legislature has worked on a bill. It's about to come out that's going to get us part of the way there. But, you know, we have a strong lobby in Congress fighting every effort to improve gun safety, improve access to safe technology, and essentially they've defunded a lot of what has been necessary to, I believe, study gun activity in a way that will enable us in law enforcement to solve crime and reduce crime.
And I'm sure you're aware, too, that there are actually restrictions on some of the federal agencies.
Yeah.
So that they can't share it.
Which makes no sense, right? The fact that ATF can't share with local or state authorities, you know, we here in Massachusetts are bordered by any number of states. And in some of those states, it's pretty easy to buy guns, or easier than to purchase guns here in Massachusetts. So we've got a real problem with illegal gun trafficking, guns coming into our borders from other states. And it's just imperative that we in law enforcement at the local and state level, together with other states, be able to share data and information so that we can really crack down on gun trafficking. And the feds need to help us with that.
I don't think people understand many times how close the New England area is. Like we have cities in our jurisdiction that actually one side of the street is one state and the other side of the street's another state. I mean, it's right down the center of the street.
Right.
So we would certainly need some looking at these gun regulations.
And that's, you know, one of the things as a state attorney general, you get to work with other state attorneys generals. And I'm committed to doing that, as I'm committed to working with local law enforcement and district attorneys' offices on these issues. Because as you know, bullets and guns don't know boundary lines. So.
And working with the other attorney generals is so important. I mean, look at the Doma case, right? You guys were first. I think it was one of your cases. Right. And something like 30 states fell in line after that?
Yeah, we showed them the way. And, you know, I think Massachusetts can lead. My gun violence plan is the most comprehensive plan out there, getting resources to those who need them, at-risk youth, targeting families, cracking down on gun trafficking, getting resources to law enforcement so that they have the tools to investigate crimes, doing a better job of providing mental health services. How many people take their lives on account of guns here in the state? Still a majority of gun deaths in the state. We obviously need to do more. And I'm committed to being an advocate and to enabling us to do more, working together in partnership with others. So, you know, we led on DOMA. That was a case that we filed. People thought we were crazy, that we couldn't win it. But it was a matter of fairness. It was a discriminatory law, and it was a civil rights violation, and I'm proud that we took the lead on that.
Well, with the gridlock and nothing getting done, it is nice, refreshing to see once in a while that a state, even a small state like Massachusetts, can get something done and get something accomplished. I'm pretty proud of that, too.
And that's what excites me about the opportunity to be Attorney General, because here in Massachusetts, we can make that happen. We can make that possible, and we don't have to wait for the federal government to act. We can act here in ways to protect ourselves, to protect our communities, and to make a positive difference in people's lives, and that's what's exciting
on the
to
DOMA,
me.
not to keep going back to that, but on the DOMA case, you not only led with the federal legislature, but you actually had the Supreme Court.
Yeah, you know, it was 5 years ago last week that we filed that case against the federal government, challenging DOMA. DOMA was a law that said married gay couples in this state, you're not really married, we don't count you, you're second-class citizens. And that was wrong and unfair to the married gay couples in this state and their families. And so I was proud to build that case in the Attorney General's office, argue that case, and win it in court. It was 4 years ago last week that we actually won that case. And
it's incredible the amount that's changed in 4 years. I
yeah.
mean, it's really been a sea change.
Well, at the time we filed, only 3 states had marriage equality. Now we're up to 20-something. So, you know, a lot has happened, but that's what's possible with leadership in the Attorney General's office.
And it is. There's proof of it. Good. We're going to take a quick break now so that our executive director can pay the bills, and we'll be right back.
Terrific.
Yo, check out this chef, right? Right? That's so gay. That's really gay. Dude, look at those pants.
Please don't say that.
What?
Don't say that something is gay when you mean that something is dumb or stupid. It's insulting. It's like if I thought this pepper shaker was stupid and I said, man, and this pepper shaker is so 16-year-old boy with a cheesy mustache. Just saying. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Hi, welcome back. Maura, you know, some of the things that we've seen happening lately is another Supreme Court decision that they've actually reduced the buffer zones around some of the medical facilities around. And of course, I'm from, you know, a small town and grew up in a small town, and I don't think a lot of people understand or realize what these zones are about, what these buffer zones. Yeah. Could you enlighten us on that?
Sure. Well, you know, a few years ago, 2007, the state legislature passed a law that created a buffer zone around healthcare clinics. And the reason that that was necessary is because women and workers at those facilities had for years been subjected to physical taunts, physical obstruction, threats, taunts. There were even instances where people would dress up as police officers and stop patients from going into a facility to try to counsel them away from certain services. And because of this, And because of the real public safety issue, in addition to the real interference with a woman's right to access health care, we passed this law here in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, that law got challenged. And even though the Massachusetts courts upheld the law and said it was the right balance between public safety and access and free speech rights, it got all the way up to the Supreme Court. And we just saw a ruling out of the Supreme Court striking down that law. Sort of interesting. Because, as you know, the Supreme Court itself and those justices enjoy a buffer zone of their own around the court. And I'm sorry they didn't see fit to give one to the women of Massachusetts.
From their buffer zone, they took away ours.
That's right.
I know once I started working down in the cities that it gets pretty rough around those medical facilities. And I don't remember the last time in this state. There was one in this state. Was people were hurt, but there's been several people shot. And
you know, we've had a history of violence here in the state on this issue, which is what led to the creation of this buffer zone. Many years ago, there were murders at healthcare facilities, and since then, there have been any number of instances of obstruction and intimidation. So, with the Supreme Court striking down that law, it's obviously now been time for Massachusetts to retool and go back and figure out a way that we can have access to needed health care. And I am committed to doing that as Attorney General, because this is a matter of a fundamental right, a woman's ability to access
I can't
care.
Even fathom it. I can't even fathom it.
Right.
So you can't go too close to the Supreme Court and exercise your First Amendment rights, but you can get right into a woman's face or a man's face that's seeking medical attention.
Yeah, as they're going to see their doctor.
Yeah.
So
I just don't understand that. Once again, we're going to switch hats. Right now, a federal jury is deciding whether the former head of the probation department, the trial's going on now, as you well know, up in Boston, and they're trying to find out whether this gentleman is guilty of conspiracy with members of the legislature in job fixing. In other words, it goes beyond more of the spoil system into that they're alleging that they rigged the system to give certain people certain jobs. Now, I know that basically the Attorney General's office is the only watchdog in the state. I mean, there's an IG, an Inspector General, but they've only got 3 or 4 people. But basically, the Attorney General's office is the last bulwark against that type of corruption that could go on. How difficult is it for you to police the people around you, police the same system that you're part of?
it's critical. You know, it's really important. The Attorney General, as you say, has a role and responsibility of protecting the public interest. And, you know, to the extent there's corruption, to the extent there's fraud in government, the Attorney General needs to be there as an independent authority to investigate and hold people accountable. You know, it's really important, and I say this to you as somebody who's worked in government, who believes in government, who wants government to work for people. It's really important that people can trust government and can trust those in government who are supposed to be acting on the taxpayers' behalf, on the people's behalf. And so, you know, as Attorney General, to the extent there are allegations of corruption, I will not be afraid to pursue that vigorously, because I owe it to the people of Massachusetts. You know, that's why I will be elected, right? That is my responsibility as an independently elected constitutional officer, as Attorney General, and that's something in a role that I would take really really seriously. I don't come out of the legislative arena. I don't have particular ties to the legislature. I've worked with members of the legislature over the years and others in government, and there are a lot of terrific people in government, and I look forward to hopefully having the opportunity to work with them as Attorney General. But believe me, to the extent there's anyone in my office, in a government agency, in the legislature, who's acted in a corrupt way, I'll be the first to go after them.
Well, I know on a local level that's extremely, I've never worked at the state level like that, but I know on a local level when you hire police officers, they're much more effective if they've been away from the people that they're policing for a while. In other words, if you just come off the corner and you're trying to police the same kids you were hanging around with for the summer doesn't work that well. If you have some distance from the people that you're trying to make enforce the rules, it would be like a referee going in and playing with a sports team as opposed to standing there and refereeing. So right now, what a percentage of the Attorney General's office is in the corruption business?
You know, there's a unit that's devoted to it. Obviously, the federal authorities do their own work as well. But certainly, you know, I will be certain to bring the necessary resources to bear to investigate and prosecute corruption out of the Attorney General's office. Because, again, it's about, I think, the sacred trust that the public should have for those of us in government. And, you know, more than that, when I look at the probation scandal and what's going on, I think about those people on probation. We call them the probationers. And, you know, it seems to me that of all agencies, you want to make sure that that agency, like a lot of the other agencies that are there to serve people, you have the right people in place, and they're doing right in fulfilling their role and responsibility, which in this instance is helping to keep and get people back on the right track.
It always bothered me as a cop, just as a street cop, that a lot of the arrests that we made on drug arrests and stuff like that, the punishment that we gave to a drug addict has no effect on deterrent whatsoever. And the punishment doesn't mean anything either. I was always felt that we missed the boat on policing and punishing people that make rational, non-alcoholic or drug-related decisions, and other people can see what's happening, and that can be a deterrent for them too. This is one place, right, I think, where a few convictions could make a big difference in everybody's activity. I think once it becomes business as usual, it doesn't work. That's just my opinion on that.
No, I agree, you know, and as a lawyer and somebody who looks to the system, the rule of law, it's really important that people have faith in it, that people believe in it, and certainly as Attorney General, I'm going to hold accountable those who should be held accountable in order to restore people's faith in the system. It's really important to me.
Well, that's very good. I want to thank you very much for sharing your time with us here today. As somebody that's been, I'm fourth generation law enforcement, so somebody that's been in law enforcement my whole life, it's a honor to be talking to somebody that could very well be an Attorney General, and an honor to talk to somebody that's done so much before you were Attorney General. We're going to have other people on the show. Hopefully we'll have other candidates for offices, and you can hear how they will approach these problems. None of these problems are simple. There's no simple answer. There's nothing can be put on a bumper sticker, but I think as Ms. Healey mentioned during her interview, that if you don't have the information, you don't have the data, you can't make good decisions, so that's why we're here. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Nice having you.
Great to be on.
Bye-bye.